Hey, before we get started with your story today, if you look at the duration of this episode, you'll notice it's not 10 minutes. It's much more than that. This happens from time to time. I get a little carried away with the episode and forget to go back and weed out some of the details that make it come in at around 10 minutes or so. I didn't do that with this one. I decided to let this one go. Let this be the unedited version of the episode. But because of that, I won't be back on at the end to remind you to subscribe if you're new and blah, 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 blah. So just know when the story ends, the episode ends, and you can binge on to the next one. Okay, bye. December 6th, 2014. A 19-year-old walks toward firefighters on a rural Mississippi back road. She's only wearing her underwear. 93% of her body is burned. And before she dies the next day, she tries to tell them who did this to her. What she says becomes evidence that no prosecutor can overcome. This is the story of Jessica Chambers. All right, buckle up because this one is brutal. We're talking about a case where the victim literally walked toward help while 93% of her body was on fire. 93%, that's almost your entire body. And she's still moving, still trying to communicate, still fighting. December 6th, 2014, Courtland, Mississippi. Population around 500. Jessica Chambers, 19 years old, former cheerleader working at Goody's department store in Batesville, gets set on fire, and despite injuries that should have killed her instantly, she gets out of that car and walks toward the firefighters who show up around 8 p.m., thinking they're just dealing with a car fire. When they see her, they're horrified. She's only wearing underwear in 40-degree weather. Her blonde hair is fried. She's burned beyond recognition. Firefighter Shane Mills knew Jessica personally. He didn't recognize her when he first saw her that night. He said it was one of the worst things he could imagine. And despite everything, she's trying to tell them something. That detail right there, what she said to those first responders, becomes the thing that derails 2 murder trials and leaves this case stuck in legal limbo a decade later. At least 8 first responders are on scene. Multiple people ask Jessica the same question: who did this to you? And she gives them a name. The problem is, every single person who heard it says she said Eric or Derek. Some heard Eric, some heard Derek, but they're all basically hearing the same thing. Now, the guy who gets charged with the murder, his name is Quinton Tellis. Not Eric, not Derek. Quinton. Jessica knew Quinton. They'd been texting. They'd been hanging out for about 2 weeks. She absolutely knew his name. So if Quinton just set her on fire, why on earth would she say a completely different name? That's the question the defense hammered into the jury's head. And honestly, pretty damn good question. The prosecution answer was basically, well, her throat was destroyed. Her mouth was full of burns. She had smoke inhalation. Maybe she was trying to say Quinton or Tellis, and it came out sounding like Eric. Or maybe the first responders who are dealing with a scene straight out of a horror movie just heard it wrong. They brought in a speech pathologist to testify. They had a doctor explain how severe throat and mouth burns affect your ability to form words. A doctor testified that Jessica had so much damage to her mouth, throat, and chest that she wouldn't have been able to properly say and pronounce any words. The argument was clinical and technical. But here's the thing. 8 different people heard the same thing, essentially. That's a lot of people to mishear the same way. And you know what a dying declaration is? When someone is about to die and they tell you who hurt them. That testimony carries a massive amount of weight in court. There's this legal assumption that when you're dying, you're not going to lie. You're not going to play games and mess around. You're going to tell the truth. Jessica was airlifted to a hospital in Memphis. She died early the next morning, December 7th, around 2:36 a.m. She never got another chance to clarify. And that one name, Eric or Derek, became the thing prosecutors would never overcome. So who is Quinton Tellis? He's 26 when this happens. He's got 3 prior convictions in Panola County. 2 for burglary, 1 for fleeing police. He got out of prison in October 2014, just 2 months before Jessica was killed. And here's what's not disputed. He was the last person confirmed to be with Jessica on December 6th. The prosecution's theory goes like this. Quinton had met Jessica about 2 weeks earlier. He'd been contacting her repeatedly, asking for sex. She kept saying no. Text messages recovered from her phone showed she turned him down 4 times on the day she died. December 6th, they meet up. They have sex in her car. Something goes wrong. The prosecutor, District Attorney John Champion, theorized that Quinton tried to suffocate her, thought she was dead, then realized she's still alive, and he panicked. So he drives her car out to this back road, gets out and runs to his sister's house nearby, borrows her car, goes back to his place to grab some gasoline from a shed, and then he returns, torches Jessica and the vehicle to eliminate a witness. And look, gasoline was definitely involved. A small piece of Jessica's bra tested positive for gasoline at an ATF lab. Someone used an accelerant. Investigators found a gasoline canister in Tellis's garage. But proving Quinton was that someone, that's where the prosecution ran into numerous problems. Because Quinton lied. A lot. When cops first talked to him, he said he only saw Jessica that morning. Quick interaction, nothing else. Then they came back with phone records, and suddenly his story changed. Oh yeah, we were actually together that evening. We had sex, I drove her car. FBI agent Tim Douglas testified that Quinton repeatedly lied during interviews. The prosecutor called him a liar to his face in court. And yeah, lying to cops is a terrible look. It makes you seem guilty. But the defense had an answer. Quinton had a girlfriend in Louisiana. He was probably cheating. Maybe he was selling drugs. He told investigators he met Jessica to sell her marijuana. So maybe he was lying low to cover up other crimes, not murder. By the time the FBI sat him down for a formal interrogation in January 2016, more than a year after Jessica died, his memory of the exact timeline was fuzzy at best. Lies tell you someone has something to hide. They don't automatically tell you they're hiding murder. The prosecution's best evidence was digital. Phone records tell a detailed story. Jessica left her mom's house around 6:30 p.m. after telling her she was going to clean her car and get something to eat. She stopped at an M&M First Stop gas station, put $14 worth of gas in her car. The clerk, Allie, said she seemed normal. Nothing seemed wrong. Surveillance footage shows her at the gas station, and at one point, something or someone catches her attention outside. Her last call to her mom was around 6:45 p.m. After that, nothing. At 7:26 p.m., surveillance footage from a store across from Quinton's house show a vehicle leaving his driveway area heading south. At the same time, Jessica's phone starts moving in the same direction. By 8:04 or 8:06 p.m., someone calls 911 to report a car fire. Cell phone data showed Quinton's phone communicating with Jessica's phone throughout the evening. His DNA was found on her car keys, found an eighth of a mile away from the burned vehicle. On paper, that sounds solid, but here's the problem. Rural Mississippi doesn't exactly have cell towers on every corner. When defense experts testified about triangulation, they had to admit something crucial. In Panola County, cell phone pings can only narrow your location down to somewhere between 2 and 20 square miles. 20 square miles. That's not putting someone at the crime scene. That's saying someone was in the general vicinity of a small town. They could have been miles apart. The defense argued Quinton was in Batesville, miles away, buying a prepaid debit card called a green dot card for his girlfriend when Jessica was attacked. And with cell data that unreliable, the prosecution couldn't definitively prove otherwise. So you've got circumstantial evidence, suggestive evidence, but not proof beyond a reasonable doubt. Here's something that makes this even more disturbing. About 7 months after Jessica's murder, in late July 2015, a graduate student named Ming-Chen Zhao was killed in Monroe, Louisiana. She was 34 years old, from Taiwan, studying at the University of Louisiana at Monroe. Her body was found 10 days later in her apartment on August 8th. She'd been tortured and stabbed more than 30 times. Someone wanted her debit card PIN, forced her to give it up, and then killed her. Quinton Tellis was caught using her debit cards after she died. Within days of her death, he withdrew several $100s from her accounts at different times. Surveillance footage captured him at ATM machines using her card. On August 20th, 2015, he was arrested. He admitted to using the cards. And here's some pretty interesting information. At 5:22 p.m. on July 29th, she made her last phone call to a friend asking for a ride to church. Then, at 8:16 p.m., someone called her bank using her account and PIN. Immediately after that, a call to the same bank was made from Tellis's phone. That's some pretty damning evidence. Quinton pleaded guilty to unauthorized use of her card May 2016, got sentenced to 10 years as a habitual offender. He was also indicted on May 17, 2019 for second-degree murder in her death. Now here's the really wild part. That Louisiana murder case has been delayed over and over for years. It was finally scheduled to go to trial December 1st, 2025. But just days before the trial was supposed to start, on November 29th, 2025, a key expert witness died in a car crash. He was driving to Monroe to testify, and he was killed in a wreck in Hattiesburg. And the prosecutor said that his testimony was vital for connecting physical evidence to Tellis. So the trial got rescheduled to January 5th, 2026. So more than 10 years after Zal's murder, Tellis is finally about to face trial for it. And get this, he asked for a bench trial, meaning a judge will decide his fate instead of a jury. Maybe he's thinking juries haven't worked out too well for him in the past, even when they couldn't convict him. If you're an investigator and your suspect is in a burning death case also connected to a torture and stabbing murder where the victim was attacked more than 30 times for her debit PIN number, that paints a pretty clear picture. It tells you this person is capable of extreme violence for financial gain. It tells you there's a pattern of killing to eliminate witnesses. But in the Mississippi trials, that evidence was mostly inadmissible. You can't tell a jury about another crime to suggest that he probably did this one too. So the Louisiana murder stayed mostly out of the courtroom, even though it's the whole reason Mississippi investigators zeroed in on Quinton in the first place. October 2017, first trial in Batesville, Mississippi. The jury was selected from Pike County, 225 miles away, to avoid local bias. The trial was emotional. Witnesses broke down. Spectators cried looking at graphic photos. First responders gave tearful testimony. One firefighter hugged Jessica's father as he stepped down from the stand. Her mother, Lisa Chambers, took the stand. She teared up, identifying her daughter. "That's my baby girl," she said. After days of deliberation, the jury sends out a note. They've reached a verdict. But when Judge Gerald Chatham asked if they unanimously agreed, confusion erupts. Turns out they misunderstood the instructions. Many voted guilty, but they weren't unanimous. Hung jury. Mistrial. September 2018. They try again in a different county. Same result. Hung jury. Mistrial. The jury was stuck between two versions of reality. On one side, circumstantial evidence. Quinton lied repeatedly. His phone was in the area. His DNA was found on her car keys. Surveillance footage shows his sister's car pulling into his driveway at 7:50 and staying for about 2 minutes before heading back out. Prosecutors said that's when he grabbed the gasoline. Cell phone records show his and Jessica's phones moving together. On the other side, Jessica's dying words, Eric or Derek, a name 8 people heard, a name that doesn't match. Investigators questioned 10 to 15 people named Eric or Derek in the area and cleared all of them. And here's a detail that makes this even weirder. A cousin of Tellis's wife told police that days after Zal's death, Tellis allegedly bragged about torturing a woman to get her debit card PIN. Court documents say she described details of her wounds and other facts that prosecutors claim only the killer would know. She's expected to be a witness in the upcoming Louisiana trial. So the jury in Mississippi couldn't get past that reasonable doubt. And you know what? I get that. When you've got 8 first responders all hearing the same thing, essentially, and it's not the defendant's name, that creates massive doubt. After 2 mistrials, prosecutors faced the tough call. Try him a third time? Former DA John Champion, who died in 2019, said at the time, quote, "I mean, he's as dangerous as a criminal as I've ever dealt with in 26 years. I mean, he's as dangerous as there is. So it's very important that either Louisiana get him convicted or we get him convicted." End quote. As of now, current Mississippi DA Jay Hale hasn't said whether he'll pursue a third trial. Quinton is 38 now, serving time for the credit card fraud. But for Jessica's murder, there's no resolution, no conviction, no justice. Jessica's mother, Lisa Chambers, died in October 2021 at age 52 without ever seeing justice for her daughter. Jessica Chambers fought to survive. She walked toward help when most people would have died instantly. She tried to give first responders a name. 11 years later, we still don't know for sure who killed her. Quinton Tellis lied to police repeatedly. The evidence against him is circumstantial but compelling. His phone data places him in the vicinity. His DNA is on her keys. Surveillance shows suspicious movements at his house. He changed his story multiple times. He was caught using another murdered woman's debit cards 7 months later. But 2 juries couldn't convict him because of those dying words. That name, Eric or Derek. This case sits in limbo. Jessica's family has no closure. Her father, Ben, a mechanic with the Panola County Sheriff's Office, said after Quinton's arrest that investigators worked tirelessly on the case. But after 2 mistrials, that optimism has faded. The community remains divided, and legally, there's no clear path forward for the Mississippi case. That's the frustrating reality when the victim's final words contradict the evidence pointing at the accused. Maybe Jessica was trying to say Quinton or Tellis, and it came out wrong. Maybe the first responders misheard, or maybe there is someone else, someone named Derek or Eric out there who got away with murder while Quinton Tellis took the heat. What we do know is that in January 2026, Tellis will finally face trial for Ming Chen Zhao's murder in Louisiana. Maybe that trial will provide some answers, maybe it won't, but after more than a decade, at least one of these cases is moving forward.